Colonel Malik Harris walked through the sliding glass doors of the city airport, his steps measured and calm. The bright morning sunlight reflected off the polished floors, and the faint hum of conversations and rolling suitcases filled the air. Yet for Malik, none of it mattered. His focus was sharp, unwavering, centered entirely on the task before him. Today was not an ordinary day. Today, he carried a burden that weighed heavier than any uniform or medal could ever represent. He had been entrusted with the solemn duty of escorting the remains of Private Amir Collins, a young soldier who had given his life in service to his country. Every step Malik took felt heavier because of the responsibility resting on his shoulders. As he approached the airline counter, his posture was upright, his expression composed. He greeted the attendant with a polite nod. "Good morning. I need to board the next available flight with this casket," he said, his voice calm but firm. The attendant, a young woman with neatly tied hair, glanced at him with a hint of hesitation. She adjusted her glasses and checked the computer. After a moment, her lips pressed into a straight line. "I'm sorry, sir," she said. "That flight is fully booked and we cannot accommodate you or the cargo at this time." Malik felt a moment of frustration rise, but he suppressed it. He had been trained to maintain composure, especially in situations requiring dignity and respect. "I understand," he replied calmly. "But this is not ordinary cargo. This is a fallen soldier. It is my duty to ensure he reaches home safely for his family." The attendant hesitated, clearly unsure how to respond. She glanced at the casket draped in the nation's flag and then back at Malik. I'm sorry, sir," she repeated. "There is nothing I can do right now." Malik nodded slowly, forcing himself to remain composed. His jaw tightened slightly, but he refused to let anger show. Instead, he thanked her and stepped aside, his eyes lingering on the casket. Inside lay Private Collins, a young man who had laughed with friends, written letters to his family, and dreamed of returning home one day. Now his journey had ended far from the people who loved him most. Hours passed and Malik attempted flight after flight. Every airline seemed to have the same response: no space, no availability, too strict regulations. With each denial, Malik felt a mixture of frustration and sadness. He knew the family would not be able to wait indefinitely, and he feared the disappointment that would meet them when he finally arrived with empty hands. Other passengers occasionally glanced at him as he moved through the terminal. Some whispered quietly to one another, curiosity evident in their expressions. Malik ignored them. Their glances were inconsequential compared to the responsibility he carried. He could not allow the opinions or rules of others to distract him from honoring Private Collins. Finally, an airline manager approached, her expression formal but serious. "Colonel Harris, I understand the situation," she said, "but our flights are full and security regulations prevent us from making exceptions. There is no way to accommodate you today." Malik's hands clenched briefly at his sides, but his voice remained steady. "This is not about convenience or regulations," he replied. "It is about respect, duty, and honor. Private Collins gave his life for this country. It is my responsibility to bring him home safely. There is no other option." The manager looked away for a moment, clearly uncomfortable, then shook her head. "I'm sorry, Colonel. Rules are rules." Malik nodded slowly. He understood rules. He had followed them his entire career, and he had enforced them countless times. But he also knew that sometimes rules needed to be challenged when lives, honor, and respect were at stake. He turned away, feeling the weight of the casket and the importance of the mission even more acutely. He stepped outside into the cool afternoon air, taking a deep breath. The airport was busy, planes taking off and landing in a steady rhythm. He closed his eyes for a moment, visualizing the journey he needed to take, thinking of the family who waited anxiously for news, and the young soldier who deserved to be honored properly. Malik remembered Private Collins vividly. He remembered his dedication, his sense of humor, and the letters he had written to his family. He had been a soldier full of life and promise, and now he was gone. Malik felt the urgency to bring him home, to give his family the chance to grieve and find closure. After a few moments, Malik returned inside the terminal. He needed a plan, something beyond the standard flights and schedules that had already failed him. He recalled a small private airfield on the outskirts of the city. Flights there were less conventional, but it might be possible to arrange a charter plane capable of carrying the casket. He approached an information desk and spoke with an agent. After explaining the situation, he received a small spark of hope. A contact at the private airfield said they could potentially assist, but it would require immediate action and coordination. Malik felt a renewed sense of purpose. Time was critical. The sun was beginning to dip toward the horizon, and every hour that passed brought the family's weight closer to frustration. Malik arranged for transportation to the private airfield, ensuring the casket would remain secure and dignified. Volunteers from the airport staff, hearing the story and understanding the gravity, offered to help. Malik accepted their assistance with gratitude. As the convoy moved through the city streets, Malik stayed alert, his mind planning every step of the journey. He reviewed the letters Private Collins had written, remembering his words, his hopes, and his dedication. Malik whispered quietly, "I will get you home, Private Collins. I will not fail you." The city passed in a blur outside the vehicle. Traffic lights glowed red and green, pedestrians moved along sidewalks, and the distant hum of airplanes filled the air. Malik remained focused, his sense of duty driving him forward with unwavering determination. Arriving at the private airfield, Malik was greeted by a small team of mechanics and pilots. They worked quickly and efficiently to prepare the plane for departure. Malik supervised every detail, ensuring the casket was treated with utmost care and respect. Every strap, every secure latch, every precaution was checked and double-checked. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the airfield, the plane's engines roared to life. Malik stood nearby, watching the casket carefully loaded, feeling a surge of relief and determination. This small plane, unconventional as it was, would carry Private Collins home. The obstacles that had blocked him before were no longer in the way. Sitting in the plane's cabin beside the casket, Malik took a moment of quiet reflection. He thought of the soldier's family, waiting anxiously, and of the countless men and women who had fallen in service. His mission was not just to transport a casket, it was to honor a life, to uphold the dignity of service, and to ensure that sacrifice was recognized. The engines hummed steadily as the plane began its taxi down the runway. Malik placed a hand gently on the casket, a silent promise. "We are on our way, Amir. We are on our way home." The plane lifted into the sky, carrying not just a young soldier, but the hope, respect, and honor of all who had served. Malik sat in quiet vigilance, ready to face any challenge, determined to complete his duty no matter what obstacles remained. In that moment, high above the city lights, Malik understood something profound. Courage was not only found in battle but in persistence, in standing firm for what was right, and in honoring those who could no longer speak for themselves. Flight had just begun, and the journey was far from over, but Malik Harris carried it with the strength of conviction, the weight of duty, and the honor of service. And above all, he carried the promise that Private Amir Collins would return home. The plane soared steadily through the sky, the engines humming a soft, steady rhythm. Colonel Malik Harris sat beside the casket, his eyes scanning the small cabin and then glancing out the window at the clouds stretching endlessly beneath him. The sun had dipped lower, painting the horizon in shades of orange and pink. Yet for Malik, the beauty of the evening sky held no comfort. His thoughts were with Private Amir Collins and the family waiting anxiously at home. Hours earlier, Malik had faced countless obstacles. Airlines had refused him, schedules had blocked his path, and regulations had seemed rigid and unyielding. The refusal at the main airport had left a bitter taste in his mouth. He had felt the weight of injustice, of bureaucracy that failed to recognize the gravity of a fallen soldier's journey home. But he had persevered, finding a private airfield and arranging this flight. Now, as the plane cruised above the landscape, Malik allowed himself only a brief moment of reflection. He remembered Amir's laughter, a clear, bright sound that had echoed through the barracks. He remembered the letters the young soldier had written to his family, full of hope, humor, and dreams of returning home. Amir had been more than a soldier. He had been a son, a friend, a young man who believed in the world even as he faced danger. The cabin was quiet, save for the low hum of the engines and the occasional murmur of the pilot, communicating with air traffic control. Malik kept a careful eye on the casket, ensuring it remained secure. He knew that this journey was not just about transport. It was about respect, honor, and dignity. Each moment he sat beside it, he felt the responsibility weigh heavily upon him. Despite the calm of the flight, Malik could not ignore the tension that had built up during the day. The refusals at the airport had been more than just inconvenience. They had been a reminder of the indifference that sometimes existed in the world. People followed rules, and rules sometimes overlooked humanity. Malik had seen it before, and today it had touched him personally. He recalled the airline manager who had refused him. Her face had been polite, professional, yet firm. "Rules are rules," she had said. Those words had stung. Malik had understood regulations, yes, but he had also understood that regulations should never overshadow respect for human life, especially when that life had been given in service. Malik leaned back in his seat for a moment, closing his eyes briefly. He thought of Amir's family, imagining their faces, their grief, their anxiety, the parents who had sent their son into danger, trusting he would return safely, the siblings who had laughed and played with him, now waiting for news. The thought of their worry strengthened Malik's resolve. He would not fail them. He would not fail Amir. Hours passed as the plane moved steadily across the sky. Malik remained vigilant, checking the straps and the placement of the casket repeatedly. He had learned long ago that diligence in small details often made the difference between success and failure. Every bolt, every strap, every precaution mattered. This was not a mission that could afford mistakes. As the flight continued, Malik reflected on the soldiers he had served with over the years. He had seen bravery, courage, and sacrifice in countless forms, yet he had also seen loss, indifference, and the quiet sorrow that often went unnoticed. Today he was reminded that honoring the fallen required more than ceremonies and medals. It required action, persistence, and unwavering dedication. Despite the calm of the cabin, Malik knew the journey was far from over. The private airfield they were heading toward was smaller, less equipped than a major airport. There were no guarantees that the landing would be smooth, no certainty that the ground crew would be fully prepared. Every moment carried uncertainty, and every decision demanded careful thought. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a photograph of Amir Collins. The young soldier smiled brightly in the picture, his eyes full of life and optimism. Malik studied the photograph for a long moment, silently promising that this mission would not fail. "I will get you home," he whispered, "no matter what stands in the way." Outside, the sky had darkened, stars beginning to glimmer faintly against the deepening blue. Malik felt a strange sense of calm despite the challenges. The world seemed vast, endless, yet he knew that no distance was too great when the mission was important. Every mile flown was a mile closer to justice, to honor, and to the family waiting on the ground. Suddenly, a faint jolt shook the plane. Malik's eyes snapped open. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, calm but serious. "We're encountering a small turbulence patch. Everyone remain seated and secure." Malik's hand instinctively went to the strap securing the casket. Every precaution he had taken was necessary now. He spoke softly to Amir. "Hold steady, my friend. We are almost there." The plane rocked gently again, and Malik felt the tension in the cabin rise slightly. Even in a small plane, turbulence could feel unsettling, but he remained composed. The hours stretched on. Malik spoke little, instead focusing entirely on the task. The private pilot occasionally glanced at him with a quiet understanding. He did not speak of the obstacles they had overcome earlier. Words were unnecessary. Malik's resolve was evident in every gesture, every careful movement. As the plane began its descent, Malik could see the lights of the private airfield in the distance. A small glow against the darkness, yet it represented hope. Ground crews were preparing, responding to Malik's earlier communications. They had been briefed, informed, and ready to assist with the arrival. Despite the preparations, Malik knew that obstacles could still appear. A small airfield had its limits. Equipment, lighting, and procedures were not as sophisticated as at larger airports. Any small mistake could delay the journey or compromise the dignity of the mission. Malik remained vigilant, watching every detail, ensuring everything was in place. The plane touched down smoothly, the tires rolling along the runway with a gentle hiss. Malik exhaled quietly, feeling the tension in his shoulders ease slightly. The mission had passed another test, yet the final step still remained. He would need to ensure the casket was moved with care, that the proper respect was maintained, and that Amir Collins would finally be in the hands of his waiting family. As the plane slowed and taxied toward the loading area, Malik felt a quiet satisfaction. He had overcome the obstacles of the day, navigated refusals, bureaucracy, and uncertainty, and still, here he was, prepared to complete the mission. Yet he remained humble, knowing that the true measure of success would be in honoring Amir's life and service. Stepping out of the plane, Malik felt the cool night air against his face. The lights of the airfield glimmered warmly, and he could see a small group waiting. Ground crew, volunteers, and a few of Amir's family members who had been briefed to witness the arrival. Malik's eyes met theirs briefly and he nodded, a silent acknowledgement of their patience, their grief, and their trust. The casket was carefully moved from the plane, and Malik followed closely, ensuring every step was measured and respectful. The ground crew worked efficiently, their movements precise, but Malik supervised each action, guiding them gently when needed. Every moment mattered. Every detail preserved the dignity of the fallen soldier. Finally, the casket was placed where it needed to be. Malik stood back for a moment, letting the scene settle. The family approached, their expressions a mixture of grief and relief. Parents, siblings, and friends moved forward, surrounding the casket with quiet reverence. Malik watched them, knowing that every obstacle he had faced had led to this moment. He stepped aside, giving the family the space to grieve, to embrace their loved one, and to find a sense of closure. Malik's heart was heavy, yet there was a quiet pride in knowing that he had fulfilled his duty. Despite refusals, obstacles, and delays, he had ensured that Private Amir Collins would be honored properly. As the family gathered, Malik whispered to himself, "This is why we serve. This is why we endure, to honor those who gave their all, and to ensure they are never forgotten." Above, the stars continued to shine, a silent witness to the dedication and courage of a man who refused to be denied. Malik knew that the night was far from over, that challenges could still arise, but he also knew that perseverance, respect, and duty had carried him this far, and they would carry him the rest of the way. The small plane had landed safely at the private airfield, and Colonel Malik Harris stepped out into the cool night air. The lights of the airfield shone softly against the darkness, illuminating the tarmac where the casket awaited. Despite the calm exterior, Malik felt the weight of the mission pressing on him more heavily than ever. This was the moment that mattered most, the final steps before Private Amir Collins could be returned to his family. Malik surveyed the scene. A small team of ground crew had gathered to assist with the arrival. Volunteers, moved by the story of the young soldier and the dedication of the colonel, had also come forward to help. Malik nodded at each of them, silently expressing gratitude for their willingness to participate in this solemn duty. The casket, draped in the national flag, was being carefully unloaded from the plane. Malik's eyes followed every movement, ensuring it was handled with the utmost care. He had witnessed the way bureaucracy and regulations had failed earlier, but now, surrounded by people who understood the importance of this mission, he felt hope stirring again. Even with the immediate obstacles behind him, Malik knew the journey was not yet complete. The casket needed to be transported from the airfield to the waiting vehicles, and then to the final destination where Amir's family awaited. Every step demanded meticulous attention. There could be no errors, no shortcuts, no moments of carelessness. As the team lifted the casket, Malik walked beside them, guiding each step. The cool night air brushed against his face, but he barely noticed it. His focus remained entirely on the task, on the weight of responsibility, and on the promise he had made to Amir and his family. Malik recalled the young soldier vividly. Private Collins had been full of life, always ready with a smile or a word of encouragement. Malik had seen him during training, on missions, and in quieter moments at the base. Amir had written letters to his family that spoke of dreams and hopes, of wanting to return home safely. Those words, those glimpses into his character, strengthened Malik's determination. He could not allow the sacrifices of a young life to be overshadowed by denial or delay. The convoy of vehicles prepared to transport the casket to the family's home was ready. Malik inspected the trucks, ensuring that each one was secure and ready for the journey. The night was quiet, but Malik sensed the weight of the moment in every shadow, every soft sound of the engines. This was a mission that transcended distance or obstacles. It was about honor, respect, and the promise that every fallen soldier deserved. As the casket was carefully loaded into the lead vehicle, Malik stepped back to oversee the operation. He allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. Today he had faced refusals, rigid rules, and long delays. He had been turned away at multiple airports, told that schedules and regulations could not be changed. Yet here he was, finding a way forward through determination, persistence, and unwavering commitment. Malik remembered the airline manager's words. Rules are rules. At the time, they had felt like a barrier, a lack of understanding of what really mattered. Now he understood more clearly than ever that courage was not only found in battle, but also in standing firm for what was right. Every act of persistence, every refusal to accept an unjust denial, was a form of bravery in its own way. The convoy began its journey through the quiet roads, the casket securely in the lead vehicle. Malik followed closely, alert to every movement, every obstacle. He knew that the mission was still delicate. Even a small distraction could disrupt the solemnity and dignity of the journey. His eyes scanned the surroundings, making sure nothing interfered with the safe transport of the fallen soldier. Along the route, the streets were mostly empty, the city settling into the calm of the night. Streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement, and the faint hum of distant traffic provided a background rhythm. Malik felt a sense of calm determination. He had faced obstacles before, yet none of them had deterred him. Each challenge had only strengthened his resolve to complete the mission. Inside the lead vehicle, Malik remained silent, his thoughts focused entirely on Amir Collins and the family waiting for his arrival. He thought of the mother who would finally be able to see her son one last time, the father who had sent him into service with pride and hope, and the siblings who had cherished every moment with him. Malik felt a deep sense of responsibility. He was not just transporting a casket, he was preserving the dignity of a life, honoring sacrifice, and fulfilling a promise that could not be broken. Hours passed as the convoy moved steadily through the city streets. Malik observed every movement, every adjustment of the casket, ensuring nothing was left to chance. The team around him worked efficiently and respectfully, their own determination evident in their careful handling of the task. Malik allowed himself a moment of quiet appreciation for their commitment. It was rare to see such dedication outside of a battlefield, yet here it was, manifest in every gesture. As they neared the family's neighborhood, Malik felt a mixture of anticipation and solemn pride. The moment of reunion was approaching, and he knew the emotions that would unfold. Grief, relief, and gratitude would all be present, and he wanted the experience to be as respectful and dignified as possible. The convoy slowed, approaching the home where Amir's family waited. Malik could see small groups of neighbors and friends gathered nearby, their faces reflecting quiet respect. He instructed the team to maintain a controlled pace, ensuring that the casket was treated with utmost care. Every step mattered, and Malik's meticulous attention to detail ensured that no disrespect could ever occur. Finally, the casket was carefully moved from the vehicle. Malik stepped forward, guiding the final steps. He could see the family waiting, their faces a mixture of sorrow and anticipation. Malik's heart ached for them, but he felt a quiet pride knowing that the mission he had undertaken had brought them this moment. The mother stepped forward first, tears streaming down her face. She reached for the casket, her hands trembling. Malik stepped aside, giving her the space to grieve, to touch her son, and to finally have a moment of closure. The father followed, placing a gentle hand on the flag-draped casket. Malik watched in silence, honoring the sacredness of the moment. He reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From refusals at airports to navigating bureaucratic obstacles, from arranging a private plane to supervising every step of the transport, every challenge had been met with determination and care. Malik knew that this mission was more than a duty. It was a statement about respect, honor, and the courage to act when others would not. Neighbors and friends quietly observed, their own respect evident in their solemn expressions. The quiet hum of the city at night provided a gentle backdrop, emphasizing the gravity and dignity of the moment. Malik remained calm, allowing the family and the volunteers to focus entirely on honoring Amir Collins. As the final moments of the evening unfolded, Malik felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The mission was not over yet. There would be ceremonies, arrangements, and final respects. But he had achieved the most important task, bringing the fallen soldier home with dignity. He had persevered when obstacles had threatened to stop him, and he had ensured that honor had been preserved. Malik took a deep breath, looking up at the night sky. The stars were bright, twinkling silently, and for a moment he felt a sense of peace. He whispered softly, "We did it, Amir. You are home, and your sacrifice will be remembered." In that quiet night, surrounded by the grieving yet grateful family, Colonel Malik Harris understood the true meaning of determination. It was more than persistence. It was courage in the face of refusal, respect in the face of indifference, and unwavering commitment to duty. He had faced obstacles, yet he had overcome them all, and in doing so he had honored not just Amir Collins but every soldier who had given their life in service. The night deepened, but Malik remained vigilant. He watched as the family shared their memories, their grief, and their love. He observed the volunteers and ground crew, who quietly departed after ensuring the mission had been completed. Malik knew that the journey had tested him, challenged him, and demanded everything he had, yet he felt the quiet satisfaction of having fulfilled his promise. This mission was a reminder that courage and determination were not always about battles or combat. Sometimes they were about persistence, respect, and the unwavering commitment to doing what was right, even when the world seemed to say no. Malik had faced that refusal, had been denied, and yet he had found a way forward. As he stepped back from the casket for a final glance, Malik felt a deep sense of purpose. The mission had been successful. The obstacles had been overcome, and Amir Collins was finally home where he belonged. Colonel Malik Harris watched quietly as the last preparations were made for the final part of the journey. The casket of Private Amir Collins had been carefully loaded onto a larger military transport plane, ready to carry him home to his family's city. Malik stood beside the casket, feeling the weight of his responsibility more than ever. This was not just a flight. It was the culmination of a mission that had been fraught with obstacles, refusals, and delays. The airport was calm in the early morning hours. Only a few staff members and ground crew remained, ensuring that the plane was ready for takeoff. The engines hummed softly, the metallic body of the aircraft reflecting the pale light of the rising sun. Malik adjusted his uniform, smoothing the creases and straightening the medals on his chest. Every detail mattered. Every gesture reflected the respect he felt for the soldier lying before him. He knelt briefly beside the casket, placing a hand gently on the flag. "We are almost there, Amir," he whispered. "Your family is waiting. You will be home soon." His voice was calm, but it carried a depth of emotion that had been building throughout the journey. He had faced refusals at multiple airports, witnessed the indifference of those who failed to see the urgency of his mission, and navigated every obstacle with care and dignity. Yet here he was, moments away from completing the mission. The flight crew entered the cabin, greeting Malik with quiet respect. They had been briefed about the special cargo, and their professionalism reflected the seriousness of the situation. Malik acknowledged them with a nod, then took his place beside the casket. The plane was quiet except for the soft hum of the engines and the faint sounds of instruments. It was a peaceful silence, one that allowed reflection and respect for the soldier's journey. As the plane began to taxi, Malik's thoughts returned to the events of the previous day. He remembered the refusals, the closed doors, and the frustration he had felt. Airline counters had turned him away, managers had refused to bend rules, and schedules had seemed immovable. At times it had felt as though the world itself had conspired to deny him the honor of bringing Amir home. Yet Malik had persevered. He had found a private airfield, arranged for a smaller plane, coordinated volunteers, and ensured that every step of the journey respected the soldier's dignity. Now, as the plane rose into the sky, He felt a quiet satisfaction that his persistence had overcome the barriers he had faced. Above the clouds, Malik gazed out of the window. The city below looked distant and small, the streets like tiny lines crisscrossing the landscape. The sky was painted in shades of gold and orange as the sun climbed higher, and for a moment he allowed himself to appreciate the calm beauty of the morning. Yet his focus never wavered from the mission. The family was waiting, and Amir Collins deserved to be returned home with the utmost respect. Hours passed, and Malik remained vigilant beside the casket. He checked the straps and supports periodically, ensuring that nothing had shifted during the flight. Every detail mattered, because every detail represented the respect he owed to a fallen soldier. He thought of Amir's bravery, his letters to his family, and the laughter that had once filled the barracks. These memories reminded Malik that the mission was about more than transportation. It was about honoring life, sacrifice, and duty. During the flight, Malik's thoughts also turned to the people who had denied him earlier. He did not feel anger toward them, only understanding and resolve. Rules and procedures could be strict, but sometimes they overlooked the human element. Today had shown him that persistence, courage, and dedication could overcome barriers, and that respect for others could not be measured by regulations alone. As the plane approached the city of Amir's family, Malik felt a sense of anticipation. Ground crews had been informed of the arrival, and arrangements had been made for a dignified transfer. Family members, neighbors, and community leaders were expected to be present. Malik knew that every step of this final journey was important, and he remained focused on ensuring that the casket arrived safely and respectfully. The plane touched down smoothly on the runway, the tires rolling along the asphalt with a gentle hiss. Malik exhaled quietly, feeling a moment of relief. The most challenging part of the journey was over, but the final steps still required attention and care. The casket needed to be unloaded, transferred to vehicles, and carried to the home where Amir's family awaited. The ground crew worked efficiently to move the casket from the plane. Malik supervised every movement, ensuring that nothing was left to chance. He guided the team with quiet, precise instructions, making certain that every gesture reflected the honor owed to a fallen soldier. Volunteers stood respectfully nearby, their faces showing understanding and solemnity. Finally, the casket was carefully moved to the lead vehicle. Malik followed closely, walking beside it with steady steps. The convoy began its journey through the streets of the city, the early morning light casting a soft glow over buildings and trees. People on the sidewalks paused to watch, their expressions showing quiet respect for the solemn procession. Malik remained vigilant, aware that the smallest oversight could disrupt the dignity of the journey. He kept a watchful eye on every detail, every movement, and every action taken by the team around him. He had faced refusals, delays, and obstacles, and he would not allow anything to diminish the respect owed to Private Collins. As the convoy approached the family's neighborhood, Malik saw a small crowd gathered to honor the fallen soldier. Friends, neighbors, and community members stood quietly, their faces reflecting solemn respect. Malik instructed the team to slow, ensuring that the casket was moved with careful, measured steps. Every moment mattered, and he knew that the family's first sight of their son would be indelibly marked in their memory. The family waited anxiously. Amir's mother stood at the edge of the yard, her eyes wide with both sorrow and anticipation. The father's hands were clasped tightly and his jaw was firm, holding back emotion. Siblings and close friends waited nearby, their faces showing a mixture of grief and relief. Malik's heart ached as he saw them, yet he felt satisfaction knowing that the journey had brought them to this moment. The casket was carefully moved from the vehicle, and Malik guided it with gentle, steady hands. He allowed the family to approach first, giving them space to grieve and to embrace their son. The mother's tears flowed freely as she reached for the flag-draped casket, the father following closely, placing a hand on the surface in a gesture of love and farewell. Malik watched silently, ensuring that the moment remained dignified and respectful. The community observed quietly, maintaining a solemn presence. Malik felt a deep sense of pride in knowing that his persistence, determination, and respect had allowed this moment to occur. The refusals at earlier airports, the obstacles, and the delays had all been overcome, proving that courage and dedication could triumph over adversity. As the morning sun rose higher, casting a golden glow over the neighborhood, Malik reflected on the journey. The mission had tested him, challenged him, and required every ounce of focus and determination. Yet it had also reinforced the importance of respect, honor, and the unwavering commitment to duty. He whispered quietly, as if speaking to Amir himself. "You are home now. Your family can see you, and your sacrifice will be remembered. We did it, my friend." Malik remained with the family for a few moments, observing them as they shared their grief, their love, and their memories. He knew that the mission was not about recognition or praise. It was about fulfilling a sacred duty, honoring a life, and ensuring that the young soldier's story would be respected and remembered. Finally, the team and volunteers quietly stepped back, allowing the family their private moment. Malik took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and satisfaction. He had faced obstacles that seemed insurmountable, yet through determination, careful planning, and respect, he had succeeded. The plane, the vehicles, and the careful coordination of people all had come together for this moment. Malik knew that persistence and courage were sometimes measured not in battles fought, but in missions completed with dignity and honor. He had learned once again that when rules, obstacles, and refusals stood in the way of what was right, determination and respect could prevail. As he stepped away from the casket, Malik glanced at the sky. The morning light shone warmly as if in quiet acknowledgement of the mission's success. He felt a sense of calm and fulfillment, knowing that Private Amir Collins had been returned home, that his family could grieve and find closure, and that the sacrifice of a young life would be honored properly. Colonel Malik Harris stood silently at the edge of the family's yard, watching as the family gathered around the flag-draped casket of Private Amir Collins. The early morning sun cast a soft golden light over the scene, illuminating the faces of those who had waited anxiously for this moment. Mothers, fathers, siblings, neighbors, and friends all observed with quiet respect. Every detail mattered, every movement. Every gesture reflected the honor owed to a young soldier who had given his life in service to his country. Malik felt a deep sense of fulfillment, yet his heart was heavy. The journey had been long and filled with obstacles. From the refusals at multiple airports to the rigid regulations and schedules that had blocked his path, he had faced countless challenges. Yet every refusal, every delay, every obstacle had strengthened his resolve. He had been denied before, and now he had proven that determination, respect, and courage could overcome barriers. The mother stepped forward first, her hands trembling as she touched the casket. Tears streamed down her cheeks, her face a mixture of grief, relief, and gratitude. The father placed a hand over hers, his eyes moist, his jaw firm. Malik observed quietly, ensuring that the moment remained undisturbed, allowing the family to grieve and to honor their son in the way they needed. Neighbors and friends watched from a respectful distance. Some held small flags, others simply stood with their heads bowed. The quiet solemnity of the scene reflected the community's shared respect for the sacrifice of Private Collins. Malik felt a quiet pride, knowing that his persistence had allowed this moment to happen. Every obstacle faced had led to this moment of dignity and honor. As the family continued to gather around the casket, Malik's mind reflected on the journey that had brought them here. He remembered the airline counter, where polite but firm refusals had blocked his path. He remembered the manager's words, "Rules are rules." At the time, those words had felt cold and discouraging. Yet today, he understood more clearly than ever that courage was not only found in battles fought, but also in standing firm for what was right. Malik's thoughts turned to Amir Collins himself. The young soldier had been full of life, with a laughter that had echoed through the barracks, letters filled with hope and dreams, and a dedication to service that had inspired everyone around him. Malik had known him well, and the loss of such a promising life weighed heavily on him. Yet the honor of bringing Amir home, of allowing his family to grieve and find closure, brought a sense of purpose that no obstacle could diminish. Suddenly, Malik noticed a group of airline officials standing at the edge of the crowd. They had arrived quietly, observing the scene from a distance. Malik recognized them immediately. They were the people who had denied him flights, refused to accommodate him, and insisted that rules were more important than duty. Their faces showed a mixture of surprise, shame, and reflection. Malik did not approach them. His focus remained on the family and on the mission. yet he could feel the weight of their regret. They had denied him, but he had persevered, and now they were witnessing the consequences of their refusal. The respect, honor, and dignity that Malik had ensured for Private Collins could not be taken away by rules or bureaucracy. The family began to share quiet words and memories. Amir's mother spoke softly of his childhood, of his favorite games and the letters he had written. The father recounted stories of bravery, discipline, and commitment. Siblings added their own memories, laughter mingling with tears. Malik listened silently, appreciating the richness of Amir's life and the love that surrounded him. This was the true purpose of his mission, not simply to transport a casket, but to honor a life fully and completely. Volunteers and ground crew moved discreetly, ensuring that every action reflected respect. Malik supervised, guiding where necessary, but allowing the family the space to mourn and remember. Every detail, from the careful handling of the casket to the positioning of chairs for elderly relatives, had been planned and executed with precision. The dedication of everyone involved reflected the collective respect for Private Collins and his sacrifice. As the morning progressed, Malik noticed the expressions of the airline officials. They had witnessed something they could not ignore. The refusal to allow a soldier's body to travel had been corrected, but more importantly, they had seen the unwavering determination, respect, and courage of a man who refused to accept injustice. Their earlier decisions now felt small and inadequate in the face of the dignity and honor displayed. Malik's focus remained on the family, yet he understood the lesson being witnessed. Respect, determination, and honor were more important than schedules or rules. Courage was sometimes measured not in battles fought on distant fields, but in the persistence to do what was right when others refused. Today, Malik had demonstrated that clearly. The community slowly approached to pay their respects. They laid small flowers and flags, bowing their heads quietly. Malik stood back, observing the scene, feeling the weight of history and duty converge in this small moment. The city, the volunteers, the family, and even the officials who had denied him now participated in a shared act of remembrance and respect. Malik knelt briefly beside the casket, placing a hand gently on the flag. "You are home, Amir," he whispered. "Your family can grieve, your life will be remembered, and your courage will never be forgotten." The words were simple, yet filled with the depth of emotion and the gravity of the mission completed. Time passed and the ceremony gradually concluded. The family gathered closer, holding each other, sharing memories, and finding some small measure of peace. Malik observed, understanding that his mission had achieved its purpose. The refusals, obstacles, and delays had been overcome, and respect had been preserved. Finally, Malik stepped back, giving the family privacy. Volunteers quietly departed, leaving the family surrounded by a community that honored the sacrifice of a young soldier. Malik looked around, taking in the scene one last time. The sun had risen fully, casting bright light over the city, illuminating faces of grief and relief, sorrow and pride. Malik knew that the airline officials who had denied him earlier would remember this day. They had witnessed the results of their refusal, and the dignity, determination, and respect that Malik had upheld. There was no anger in him, only the quiet knowledge that actions mattered more than words, and that courage often required persistence in the face of refusal. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the mission finally lift. Private Amir Collins had returned home, honored fully and completely. Malik's role, though difficult and challenging, had ensured that the family's grief could be expressed with dignity and that the sacrifice of a young life would never be forgotten. As he walked away from the home, Malik glanced back one last time. The family remained around the casket, holding each other, sharing memories, and beginning the process of healing. He felt a deep sense of peace. This was why he had served. This was why he had persevered. Not for recognition, not for reward, but to ensure that honor, respect, and courage were preserved. The airline officials remained, their expressions solemn. Malik did not speak to them. Words were unnecessary. The message had been delivered. Rules and refusals could delay the journey, but they could not prevent courage, respect, and duty from succeeding. Malik walked to his vehicle, the morning light warm on his face, carrying with him the quiet satisfaction of a mission completed and a life honored. Above, The city moved on with its daily routine, unaware of the profound journey that had unfolded. Yet in that quiet morning, in a small neighborhood illuminated by the rising sun, Colonel Malik Harris had shown the true meaning of duty, perseverance, and respect. He had faced refusal, overcome obstacles, and ensured that a fallen soldier was returned home with dignity. And for Private Amir Collins, for his family, and for everyone who had witnessed the journey, the message was clear. Courage and respect could triumph over any barrier, and the sacrifices of those who gave their lives in service would never be forgotten. Malik paused for a final moment, placing a hand over his heart. "Rest well, Amir," he whispered. "Your life has been honored. Your journey is complete." With that, he stepped into his vehicle, the morning sun warming his face, ready to continue his service, carrying with him the quiet knowledge that true courage was sometimes found in persistence, respect, and unwavering duty.